As a POC, have you ever been educated on your culture and history by a woke white person? I once had a white acquaintance tell me that because I am indigenous, she would let me use the term spirit animal. I nearly had a stroke. I, as an Indian woman, was told to be more offended by few white girls online. When Beyoncé wore something Indian when she performed to a private wedding here, her dress was designed by a very famous Indian designer on behalf of the man whose daughter was getting married. The dress was pretty. She looked pretty, and it was not cultural appropriation because she was literally given the dress to wear by designer who was an Indian and the wedding party who were Indian as well. The criticism was simply ridiculous in my opinion. You mean I'm supposed to be wealthy as an Asian American, ma'am? Yes, my English is good because I was born here. No, I don't adhere to every cultural superstition that came from my ethnic background. I have been accused of appropriating my own culture by a white woke person because I'm white passing. I was super upset and she kept pushing me to prove it, but how? I spoke my tongue. But she accused me of making up gibberish. I was in the States for a semester during my undergrad as an exchange student from India. I hit it off with a white girl in one of my classes, and we even went on 2 to 3 uneventful dates. Up until when she met me on campus the following week and casually mentioned how she feels for my people because white people took my land and are still occupying it. Native Americans. She thought my saying Indian meant I was a red Indian. Her words. Obviously. I had an Australian girl lecture me about racism in Germany. Absolutely ridiculous. As a white man, this is good news. We don't want to date people like that. Sounds exhausting. Lol. I haven't seen this mentioned yet. But I think another piece of it is that they may want to feel like they belong. Like they can relate to a culture and maybe be connected to it in some way. Even if only tangentially. It's not well received to celebrate white culture, or to be proud of your white heritage. There's this idea of black individuals being brothers and sisters, like there's a common shared history and experience. A kinship. Even if it isn't necessarily reality. There's that perception. You don't see that perception for white culture. As you have said, the perception of white culture is that it is boring and hardly exists at all. If people are referring to it, they're usually talking about it in the negative. Such as white supremacy. Some white people, especially women, feel a longing to be a part of that kinship of culture, and feel that their own is not safe to be celebrated. So they try to latch on to other cultures, almost hoping that someone of that culture will adopt them into it. I took a 2-day diversity workshop when I used to work at a university. There was an exercise where we were supposed to think about our culture individually, and then come together in a group and each discuss different aspects of it, comparing and contrasting in constructive discussion. It was very much a struggle for the white participants. They would come to the group exercise having written very little down about their culture, and not really knowing how to answer the questions. You could tell that they felt left out of the discussion, and when they listened to others talk about their culture they looked almost envious. None of this is to say that we should be throwing some sort of pity party for them, or that what your friends have said to you is appropriate, but it might help to explain where some of them are coming from. Humans are social creatures that want to feel a sense of belonging. If you aren't finding that within your own culture, you tend to seek it somewhere else. I took a master's level class one time on Canadian Indigenous communities, culture, and literature. The course was run by an upper-middle-class white woman. The syllabus literally stated that a core course question was, why is it that white middle-class Women seem to be the main group of people in society who champion the rights of minorities. Quote, "The students in the class were all white, middle-class women except for one woman from a local indigenous community who was there pro bono as an expert, who was getting university experience out of the deal. She did a huge amount of mental and academic labor for the course. We literally had a talking circle where one of the richest white girls cried over how entitled she was and that she was upset that she had never experienced trauma and her life had been so easy. She also brought a guitar to one of her seminars and sang us a song about healing after she had gone to an indigenous conference. Everyone cried." A white presenting, white-raised woman who had recently discovered she had a part indigenous father wrote a series of poems on indigenous women and her deep hurt. The class collectively decried one of Ondatya's texts as too violent and also redubbed it as showcasing feminism in indigenous societies, even though the text is strongly focused on both masculine and feminine balances in that particular society. And they came to the conclusion that the settlers and white colonialism represented masculinity and indigenous societies' representative feminism. The white professor brought in shortbread cookies with lavender and poorly flavored guacamole with pita bread as snacks. Everyone ignored the massive intersection between poverty, trauma, and indigenous societies in modern-day Canada. We took a trip to a local cultural center to talk about how our course was so important to the local community. White women are weird, man. I'm from the Middle East and yeah, it happens a lot. TBH, the things people think are okay to say to me are pretty wild. I've been called Aladdin because I'm a dude with long hair. People have told me to shave a certain way to look more Arab, and I've been told countless times how healthy Arabic food is. I get the whole, I'm white but I'm not white, from people who are so obviously trying to use my identity as an aesthetic. The most offensive thing is probably when people try to force Islam on me even though I tell them countless times I'm not Muslim. I've had people argue with me about how I'm actually Muslim. I've even had a few white girls tell me my actual religion, Mandaism, is made up. And oh Lord, the amount of people who try to teach me about Islam when they clearly know nothing about it is absurd. I don't know why they won't accept it when I say I'm a non-Muslim Middle Eastern who actually knows and have studied Islam. Though the worst emo is when people get offended for me, tell me what I should get offended by. My best friend calls me a dirty terrorist but he only says it because it makes me laugh. Like Karen IDC if my best friends call me a terrorist or a sand end because it's hilarious to me. Oh yeah, in high school I was in a club ran by woke white people about telling our stories, but it was pretty weird because they tried to make us fit into what they thought our stories were. I told them I'm a victim of a genocide that wasn't reported and that I belong to one of the smallest yet most influential religious minorities in the world. Yeah, I got excluded and never once was my story shared. They invited a professor who studied situations just like mine and she literally had to sneak past them to talk to me, and we even spoke in a different language. Oh, it's in the gay community too. Nightmare. Yeah, I find this so exhausting too. A lot of my friends are super into social justice. And I know their intention is good, but at the end of the day it's so divisive and doesn't help. Hating on white men is so ridiculous and counterproductive. MLK Jr. said it best. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Your woke friends sound like racists. I obviously don't know you or these women. But it sounds like white guilt. They could mean well but are overcorrecting in their attempt to make it clear that they are white. People who get it. Hopefully that made sense. I've tried to bring light to exactly this. I'm a white woman and been called racist, bigot and a white supremacist. Like, can't we treat people of color with the respect you and they deserve? I get downvoted on Reddit for saying this and get chastised on Facebook by even my own relatives. Woke, white people have so much to say to situations they have no say in. You can't be an ally when you're lecturing the oppressed on their own oppressions. It's getting me fumed just typing this. Oh yes, I have. All through school we used to have a class called Native Studies, they later called it's social studies, and all the time they would talk about the Inuit and how the man helped us so much to this day. And I should be thankful. Little did she know my family was a part of the relocation of the Inuit. Back in the 1950s, the white man was not kind to my people. The use of Latinx drives my Latina wife nuts. Hacking up the Spanish language to fit woke standards without having any idea of how gender works in that language is not cool. They do that because they think putting white men down somehow lifts you up. It's a super toxic mentality and it's never okay. So, I play D&D and I play with a mixture of people. I am the only white person at the table and I'm a male. I'm also the only history buff. So I'm constantly providing or talking about the history of racism and sexism with my friends. Teaching them things like the MOVE bombing, the Nebraska race riot to lynch Will Brown, La Matanza or Horde de Sangre when lynching of Mexicans was happening in Texas during a specific time. Would anyone actually consider this an issue? You sound nice. Your friends kind of sound like idiots though. I try to avoid explaining other people's experiences to them. Also, I don't think racism, sexism is okay even when directed at white guys, but it's considered socially acceptable because it's seen as punching up. I guess your friends are trying to show you that they are good allies and feel guilty about their privilege, but it just sounds exhausting.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.